Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here, and welcome to the Redeemed and Restored broadcast on my YouTube channel, where we connect every Friday so that together we can intentionally discover the faithfulness of God. So today's episode of Redeemed and Restored is entitled, This One Thing I Seek. King David introduces the 27th Psalm with great commitment to trusting God even in the midst of great danger. Evil people who've come to devour him, enemies and foes attacking him, and the overwhelming reality of a mighty army surrounding him. Rather than giving into fear and terror, he declares, "My heart will not be afraid. Even if I am attacked, I will remain confident." He continues on in this psalm to illustrate the one thing he seeks after: to dwell in the Lord's presence, to gaze upon him, and to delight in the very sight of him, and to meditate and reflect on him with great pleasure. We're going to unpack this one thing King David is giving us insight to do so that we might walk in his ways and live in his wonder. So I'm filming the introduction to this week's broadcast in my happy place. I've come to you from here before. It's my newly remodeled kitchen that came as an unexpected blessing and surprise last Thanksgiving. So you know the drill. Be sure to like, follow, share, comment, and click on the notification bell in one of those corners. Maybe even start a conversation under the discussion tab. So hey, let's get started. Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here for this week's edition of Redeemed and Restored. I'm coming to you again this week with thoughts on truth, the Christian life, and God's incredible faithfulness. The title of today's episode of Redeemed and Restored is This One Thing I Seek. This past week was the 1-year anniversary of this broadcast, Redeemed and Restored. It's been a year full of wow and wonder in the Lord. The first 9 months were spent unpacking my journey of salvation and then lack of surrender, which led to vulnerability, resulting in over a decade of deception, followed by exhilarating freedom, moving into deep, deep healing, and finally the restoration I walk in today as a result of the faithfulness of God, who worked all things together for good. Even all those years of deception and all the loss that I endured, he worked it all for good. Since completing that process of reflecting, I've shared from some of my quiet times with the Lord in areas of growth and sanctification that have really impacted me and I felt might be helpful to you as well. I'm still praying about the future and the direction God wants me to take with this weekly broadcast, which is also a podcast. So today I would like to focus our attention on Psalm 27, verse 4. The New Living Translation says it this way: "The one thing I ask of the Lord, the thing I seek most, is to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, delighting in the Lord's perfections and meditating in his temple." The Amplified says it a little differently: "One thing I have asked of the Lord, and that I will seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord, in his presence, all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty, the delightful loveliness, and majestic grandeur of the Lord, and to meditate in his temple." As I reflected on this passage, I saw 4 action steps that David modeled for us, saying it was the thing he sought the most. So that must mean this is important for us to grab a hold of and embrace. First to seek, then to dwell, then to gaze, and then to meditate. The Blue Letter Bible app that I have on my iPhone described the Hebrew root word for seek as to seek the face of God. Dictionary.com defines seek as to go in search of or quest of, to explore, follow, investigate. But here's the one that resonated with me: to pursue or chase after someone or something. This is setting us up to see the priority this should hold in our life. David says, this is the one thing that I will seek, pursue, chase after. David says he wants to dwell in the house of the Lord in his presence. The Hebrew root word means to remain, stay, tarry for an indefinite time. Dictionary.com defined dwell as to live or continue in a given condition or state. To linger over, emphasize, ponder in thought, speech, or writing. Some of the synonyms for dwell are abide, inhabit, reside, rest, settle, stay, tarry. As I drill down on tarry, the significant concept is to wait. In the Hebrew, to gaze is to look upon, to contemplate, especially with pleasure, to delight in the sight of something. Wow. This is what David modeled in the way he pondered the beauty and the majesty of the Lord. Dictionary.com shows gaze as to look steadily and intently, as with great curiosity, interest, pleasure, or wonder. This is no quick peek or a short span of attention. This communicates ongoing consideration and thought and focus with a sense of awe. And lastly, to meditate or inquire in his holy temple. The Hebrew root word means to inspect diligently, to look at with pleasure. Dictionary.com defines it as to engage in thought or contemplation, to reflect. Synonyms include to ponder, consider, examine, mull over, and study. So to seek, dwell, gaze, and meditate could be best described as to pursue, linger, focus, and reflect. Over the last month, I've had the privilege of sharing the stage with Redemption Press author and team member Carol Tetzloff, also known as Yellow Girl, and she shared on the topic of worship. She helped us recalibrate our vision of God in wonder, in our words, in our weeping, and in our work, emphasizing that a proper view of God will enable us to see ourselves and the world around us more clearly, resulting in a passion for those who don't know him yet. I love how what she taught aligns with these action steps. When we pursue him with our whole hearts and linger in his presence, then our focus is consumed with his majesty and goodness, causing us to reflect upon his will with pleasure, seeing the privilege we have in being used by him as we live as Jesus with skin on to those around us. So my prayer for you today, and for me, for all of us, is that we would pursue God with everything we have, that we would slow down and linger, tarry, rest in his sweet presence, that we would focus intently and with great delight on Jesus rather than on our current circumstances, and that we would reflect with pleasure on his faithfulness in our lives and tell everyone we can about all the ways He works all things together for good for those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. So hey, thanks for joining me today. I'd sure appreciate it if you would like, follow, share, and comment on this episode. My name is Athena Dean Holtz, and this is Redeemed and Restored. Hey, so thanks for joining us today on the Redeemed and Restored video broadcast, brought to you by me, Athena Dean Holtz, who happens to be a horse lover, and the Romans 828 bookstore, which is a division of Redemption Press, which is right down the street that way, around the corner, right here in downtown Enumclaw, where everything is happening. So I would love to have you review and share this broadcast with friends, family, and others who could use the encouragement. And if you know someone who might prefer the audio podcast version of today's episode, you can go over to redeemedandrestoredpodcast.com and share a link from there. So thank you so much for joining me today. See you next week right here on YouTube for another episode of Redeemed and Restored.